First of all, hello. My name's Caroline Perkins, and I'm the Project Manager of the Business Development Division of Voice 123. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar presented by James Alburger. First of all, for those of you that are unfamiliar with the GoToWebinar software, you'll see the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't see it, you should see a little tab with arrows on that you can just click to pop up the control panel. For most of you, it's probably better for you to have the control panel popped away unless you want to ask any questions. On the control panel, you'll see a chat box where you, or a question and answer box, sorry, where you can ask your questions, and I'll try to get through them all by the end of the webinar. At the very end, we'll have a question and answer session where James will answer as many of the questions as time permits. Now, although an introduction I'm sure is not necessary, but just in case, for more than 35 years, James has worked with voiceover artists as a director, performer, and studio engineer in Los Angeles and San Diego. For 25 years, he was a director and audio producer for television station NBC 739 in San Diego, receiving 11 Emmy Awards, Omni Intermedia Awards, and Silver Microphone Awards for his work. He's currently an independent audio producer, voice actor, speaker, author, and teacher, and today we'll be sharing some of his best-kept secrets of the industry. So I'm just going to allow James for you to share your screen.
Welcome, everybody, for joining me on this conference call and webinar this morning, sponsored through Voice 123. And, of course, you're here to learn more about the Art of Voice Acting book and the craft and business of voice acting all together. So we've got some interesting things to talk about this morning for about the next hour or so. The first thing that I want to talk about is some of the things that we're going to be covering in the webinar and some of the things that you can get out of this webinar. This, of course, is a special promotion for the hot off the press promotion through Voice 123 for the new edition of the Art of Voice Acting book. It's the third edition. I'm sure many of you have either the first edition or the second edition of the book. Well, the third edition is completely updated. I went through literally every page, updated the information, brought everything current, added new scripts. The audio CD in the book is completely new. I have completely new contributions from some of the top voice talent in the country and in the world that I'm going to mention later on. So it's an incredible book, and it's the biggest book on voiceover ever written. It's 368 pages, 1.5 pounds heavy. So if you were to buy a copy of the book through this promotion today, by going to the website that you see on your screen, voiceacting.com/AOVAV123, go to that website, and if you order a copy through that website, you'll get an autographed copy of the book, signed by me, promise, and you'll get more than $150 in other bonuses. I've got a bunch of downloadable audio from some of our past seminars that you will find incredibly interesting, and there's some other things on there as well. So it's more than $150 worth of bonuses. That discount offer, or this bonus offer, is only good until the 15th. So you have until next Wednesday to take advantage of that. After that, the website goes away and is no longer available. I'd also like to encourage you to subscribe to the free Art of Voice Acting newsletter. And you can do that at voiceacting.com/elists. When you subscribe to our newsletter, this is how we communicate with our database, our mailing list. We let you know about workshops that we have coming up, both in San Diego, around the country. We're constantly featuring voice talent from around the country. It's a jam-packed newsletter. There's just a ton of stuff in there. It is a long read. We're looking at reformatting it for next year, but there's just a goldmine of information in that newsletter. Today I'm really going to be focusing on the third edition of my book, and I'm going to talk about what the book really focuses on. And that is the 7 core elements of a performance and how you can use those. And I'm going to break those down and give those to you right here. Because even though you know what the 7 core elements are, you can start using them. But what really is helpful is for you to really experience how to use them firsthand. And that's when it becomes important to take workshops and training and really get a coach who understands how to apply those techniques, who can direct you and really let the light bulbs go off in your own brain so that you have the gotchas. And, oh, got it. And now then you understand exactly what's needed and how to use it. It's very much like riding a bicycle. You can watch somebody ride a bicycle. You can know the entire physics of keeping your balance and how to ride a bicycle and how to move forward on a bicycle. But until you actually get on the bicycle, you really don't know what the experience is like. And ice skating is another example. If you've done any ice skating, you know how easy it is to fall down when you're learning how to do it. It's the same thing with any kind of craft. And voiceover is definitely a craft that you really, if you're going to pursue it seriously, you really need to consider taking some training from workshops and coaches and just continue learning. There is so much to this. It's just amazing. I'm also going to talk about some demo tips and tricks later on in this call. And if I have time, I'll mention some other tips from the pros. And, of course, take some of your questions later on as time permits. As I mentioned, this is the most comprehensive book on voiceover that's ever been written, and I've read them all. And there are things that you'll find in the third edition of The Art of Voice Acting that you will not find anywhere else. You just won't find them in any other books. The book is divided into 3 sections, and there is an audio CD that comes with it. The first section on the business of voiceover, part 1, is basically an introduction. It lets you know what the fundamental principles are of voiceover, what the business is like at its essence. And the purpose of this is to really give you the information that you need in order for you to make an intelligent decision as to whether or not it's something you really want to pursue. The second, that has 4 chapters, by the way, and which are the essentials of working in voiceover. Then from there we get into the acting for voiceover section, which is 11 chapters that cover every aspect of voiceover work. And in these 11 chapters, we talk about things like using your instrument, because your voice is an instrument. It's just like a clarinet or a violin or a saxophone, any other kind of musical instrument. Your voice is an instrument. It's a wind instrument. And you need to know how to use it properly in order to effectively perform from the script. Of course, the 7 core elements are featured in this edition of the book. In the second edition, the 7 core elements were delegated to about a paragraph. In this edition, it's an entire chapter, and I really get into the nuts and bolts of it because I was still developing this whole concept when the second edition came out. In the acting for voiceover section, I also talk about developing techniques. Now, developing technique is really about, it's the acting process. It's the different tools that you can keep in your toolbox. Whenever you're working with a script, you can pull out the tools that are right for that particular experience, that particular script, or whatever the project is you're working on. Not all tools are going to be right for all people. So what I do is I give you a whole bunch of tools, a whole bunch of different acting techniques, a whole bunch of exercises that you can use to develop your performing skills. And whichever ones work for you, use them. If it doesn't work for you, fine. Find something that does work for you that's going to move you forward in your voice acting work. Voice Acting 101 is an expansion on the techniques. It's more of the acting and performing techniques. I pull into some of the other prominent schools of acting because this is acting. It is all about acting. It's all about creating characters and creating a performance through the process of storytelling with our voice. And that is acting. And I tap into some of the techniques from Meisner's School of Acting, from Stanislavski method acting. There are different pieces that I pulled in from a lot of different areas that I find work very effectively when we're working on microphone with a script. Woodshedding and script analysis is another aspect that's covered in depth. I like the term woodshedding because it defines exactly what it is we're doing. We're breaking down the script. We need to take a script and we need to find the essence of the story. What's going on in that story? What's our role in it? Who are we talking to? All the different aspects of the performance are revealed through the process of woodshedding and script analysis. Now, I should mention something about the woodshedding process. There are some people for whom woodshedding is going to be absolutely essential, and they will find this to be a tool that they will use over and over again, and it becomes incredibly valuable. There are other people who are performers or voice talent who will take the process of woodshedding and they'll understand it and they'll just automatically do it. They won't have to think about it. Or they'll do just bits and pieces of woodshedding. They may just do minimal underlining or minimal script notation, whereas somebody else might, by the time you look at their script after a session, you can't even see the words because of all their notations on it. So it's a very individual and personal process. And what I do in the book is I give you different ways of approaching it. I give you the way of looking at woodshedding. Here are some ways you can mark your script. Here's just some ideas. If you've got other ways of marking a script or other ways that you want to break down and analyze the script, go for it. But part of my job as an author and as a director and a voice coach is to give you some tools to use and some ideas and different ways of looking at things. If you always look at something from the same perspective, you're always going to get the same results. And one of the things that's very true in the world of voiceover is we need to be able to experiment and to really find and discover what the best results will be or how to achieve the most effective results. And sometimes that requires a different approach to looking at the script or a different approach to the delivery or a different approach to just how we're approaching the script. Next, I get into the character in the copy. Every script that we work with has a character. And the interesting thing about voiceover work is the character is never you. It's always going to be somebody else. Now, it could be somebody that's in personality traits as close to who you are, but on the other hand, it might be something that's radically different. You might be playing the role of a talking toaster. Who knows? So one of the things that we need to understand as voice talent is that there really is a character in that script, and we need to learn and understand how to get to that character quickly. And that's what the character in the copy chapter is all about. I talk about how to do that. And there are more things on character later on in the book. Because really, ultimately, as voice actors, we create characters. That's what we do. Now, I do break down voiceover into two different types of performers. There are the voice talent who I consider to be celebrity voice talent, and then there are character voice talent. And here's the difference. The celebrity voice talent is somebody who uses their real voice to communicate the message in a script. And through the use of their voice, there will be minor shifts in emotion or attitude or dynamics or intensity, but it's pretty much their voice. They have mastered their instrument. That's what they play. They don't get into a lot of variations. You could look at it as kind of a classical musician. They play the instrument in a very much the same form, the same style all the time, but there are some variations on it. Some typical voice talent who fall into the celebrity voice talent genre or area. Don LaFontaine, perfect example. He's the movie trailer voice. He has a very distinctive voice, a very distinctive style. You're never going to see Don LaFontaine or hear him on a cartoon. Just ain't going to happen. That's not what he does. He has found his niche, he has mastered his niche, and he's making millions doing that. And it's absolutely possible for anybody in this world of voiceover to discover their niche, perfect it, hone it, polish it, market it, and to find the market out there where their voice, that particular style that they have developed, is something that becomes in demand. So that's the celebrity voice. The character voice talent are the people who do animation and cartoons. And what they do is they have a normal voice that they speak with all the time, but then they go into character voices. And the characters that they create are radically different personalities from who they really are. And the voices match the characters. So there's a whole chapter in creating characters and how to work in creating character voices. And I borrowed from Pat Fraley and a number of other major character voice people to give you the tools to use to create character voices and just how to do it. Now, not all of you are going to be able to create character voices, and that's fine, because you can become the celebrity voice. Find the voice that works for you, how you can best tell the story, and develop and hone that and polish it and become the best at that as you possibly can be. And that becomes your marketing voice. And others of you you'll love to do wacky character voices. There are some limitations on the character voices. If you're in a market that does primarily industrial narrations or commercials, there's not going to be a lot of demand for wacky characters. But by knowing how to create wacky characters, you can also create alternate personalities of real people characters. And that becomes very important. I then get into the 4 primary genres of voiceover work, and there are only 4 primary areas of voiceover. There is single voice work, multiples, which includes dialogues, doubles, and any cast where there's more than 2 or 3 people. There's the character voice work, of course. And then there's industrials and narration, which are the corporate long-form projects. But there are a lot of other types of voiceover work. It's not just these 4. But every type of voiceover work falls into one of these 4 categories, so that's why I've broken it down this way. Some of the other categories or types of voiceover work include telephone messaging, radio imaging, radio promo, TV promo, movie trailers, industrial corporate narration. It just goes on and on. Medical narration is a specialty all its own. Audiobook is another one. So there are lots of little subcategories of voiceover work, and I know a number of voice talent who have focused on a specific genre or a specific area, and that's what they have become very good at. That's what they market themselves in, and they become quite successful. The problem that a lot of voiceover people do or have is they'll be working on their craft, and they want to do everything. So they'll do some commercials, they'll do some industrials, they want to do cartoons too. So what happens is it becomes unfocused. And when a voice talent is unfocused, then the marketing becomes fragmented, and it becomes very difficult to manage that. Encourage is, especially with our students, is find what you're good at. Discover that. It can take some time. But in order to discover what you're good at, you need to experiment with all the opportunities, all the possibilities. You may be very surprised. My partner, Penny Abshire, who co-teaches my workshops with me, when she started off by taking my 8-week voice acting workshop here in San Diego. And we'd get to the character class, and she'd get to that class and she said, I don't do characters. I'll do anything else you want, but I don't do characters. So I said, okay, that's fine. Put her in the booth, let her do her thing, and that was fine because she was learning the process. Well, she ended up taking the course 3 times in a row. And then we went into the advanced classes, and during one of the advanced classes, she had a script, and the way she tells the story is she was looking at the script, and she just knew the voice that needed to go for that script. So she let herself get out of her way to create that voice, and from that point on, she's nothing but characters. They come out of her all the time, and so she opened that door and discovered that she can really create interesting, believable characters without a lot of difficulty. But before that, she was holding herself back just by saying and telling herself that she didn't do characters. So it's very interesting what you can do and the sorts of things you can do when you actually start to get out there and experiment. The last section of the book is on the business of voiceover. And here's where I really get into the nuts and bolts of the business. And I get into a lot of things that I'm sure will be somewhat controversial as time goes by, because I talk about things that are in many ways considered taboo. I talk about the unions. I talk about working non-union, being in the union, working non-union. I talk about marketing. I talk about setting price fees, your fee schedules, all kinds of things that are things that work for us, that work for me. So I'm presenting them as options. These are things that you need to know about. Nobody else is talking about this stuff. I haven't seen this written in any of the other voiceover books, but there are things that you need to know about. So that's why I put them in the book. Things about voiceover demos that you need to know about. How to work the business. One of the keys in working the business is you've got to know that you're in a business. This is show business. The bigger part of this is business. Show is when we're on mic. Business is all the other stuff we do behind the scenes, all of our marketing, demo production, everything else that we do is part of the business side. So I talk about how you can do that. How do you market yourself? How do you set a business plan? All those things are in here. I also talk about setting and managing your fees. If you visited some of the discussion boards on the internet over the last few months, you've seen various discussion threads on talent fees. Well, I get into that. I talk about some ideas on how you can go about setting your fees and some of the things to take into consideration when you're setting your fees. It's not just a matter of a producer offering $150 to do a 30-second radio commercial and whether that's acceptable or not. There's a lot more to it. What have you done? What has your investment been in books, in training, in taking workshops, in your marketing, in your demo production, in the equipment that you've purchased so that you can record at home, in the acoustical setup that you've done? All of these things become factors that you need to take into consideration as a business person. So I talk about all of that and give you some ideas on how you can set your fees. I also talk about auditions, the two basic types of auditions, which are studio auditions and auditions that you'll do over the internet. So I talk about those and different ways that you can approach them as well. And then what do you do when you get the gig? This is something a lot of voice people don't think about. They get so gung-ho and so eager to get out there and start doing voiceover work. So they take some classes and they produce a demo and they start marketing and they start doing auditions, and all of a sudden they get a gig. They get the booking. Now what? How do you deal with that? How do you handle the negotiation? How do you make sure you're going to get paid? Because there are a lot of clients out there, I hate to say it, but there are some producers out there who are a little less than ethical, and they will take 3 to 6 months before they'll cut you your check. Well, that's a long time to wait to get paid. So you've provided a service. Your service is valuable. Your time is valuable. You need to be compensated fairly for what you do, and you need to be compensated in a timely manner. So I talk about that as well. The final chapter in the book is my absolute favorite chapter. And this is the second time that I put this chapter in the book. And I have a completely new roster of professionals who have contributed to the third edition. And you'll see some of the names on the screen here. Don LaFontaine, of course, Bob Jump, Susan Berkeley, Mark Cashman. You'll know a lot of these names. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But in addition to the contributions that they put into the book, I also include their websites so that you can go visit their websites, listen to their demos, listen to projects they've done, see how they are marketing themselves. And you can take what you learn from visiting those sites and listening to those demos and create your own marketing plans. Create your own tools. Modify what you see and make it your own. A lot of people in here, very well-known people, you may not recognize some of the names. For example, Don LaFontaine and Joe Cipriano are two of only 13 voice talents who do national network television promo around the world. There are only 13 voices in the entire world that do network promo. So that one's a tough niche to break into. And you've got to be really at the top of your game to get to that point. Bob Bergen is the voice of Porky Pig for Warner Brothers. He's the official Warner Brothers voice. Don and Joe, for example, getting back to them, they are both celebrity voices. Bob Jump has a wacky roster of characters that he has created. Cowboy Bob is one of them. He has a whole bunch. Right now he's doing a major promotion for Santa. He's one of the top Santa Claus voices in the country. So he's marketing heavily for that right now. But Bob is a character guy, totally character. And to listen to his character voices, you would never know Bob if you were just to talk to him on the street. Doesn't sound anything like any of his characters. Susan Berkeley, brilliant with telephone messaging and with the business. Wally Wingert, very versatile voice talent, on-camera actor in L.A. Lonnie Manella, producer and director and voice talent for video games. Rodney Salisbury, a good friend of mine, and I think Rodney has a promotion coming up in another month or so with Voice 123. So be looking for that as well. Rodney, if you have watched any national television, you've heard Rodney. he's all over the place on network commercials. Michael Minitree, great coach back on the East Coast. Tanya Terwilliger is here in San Diego. Kathy Garver, former film actor, TV actor. She was Sissy on Family Affair, if you remember that show. I'm dating myself. Betty Zoller, of course. And Stefan Cannell is an interesting story. He's in Sweden. And Stefan he'd been doing some voiceover work in Sweden, a little bit here and there, and some other acting. And he came across a copy of my book over there, bought it, started going through it, and when he started applying what was in the second edition, it gave him a whole new perspective on what he could do as a voice talent. He changed the way he was marketing. He changed the way he was working on the craft. And within a year or so, that took him a little longer than that, but he has now positioned himself as one of the top voiceover people in Sweden. And his demo is on the audio CD. And the interesting thing about his demo is it's in Swedish. I don't understand a word of what he's saying, except there's some English in there sprinkled in. But the important thing is, by listening to his demo, you can absolutely understand the emotion and the dynamics behind what he is saying. You feel the drama in what he's talking about. And that's a huge part of what voiceover is all about. Ron Barrett's a journalist in LA who talks about media and radio and has written some really interesting articles. And his contribution in the book is about moving from radio to voiceover. Doing voiceover work at a radio station is completely different from doing voiceover work for commercials or industrials. They're two different worlds. They're a completely different approach to delivering the message. And one of the things that Don talks about is he's interviewed Tom Kelly, who's currently the afternoon drive DJ in Los Angeles on K-Earth 101, the number one station in LA, and afternoon drive position. Well, Tom came from a background of radio, long-term background in radio and on television. And when he got up to LA, he wanted to do more voiceover work. Well, he started taking his demo around to the agents, and what he discovered was as soon as the agents found out he came from radio, they closed the doors. So he had to rethink his whole process of breaking into voiceover. Took some other training, took other classes, redid the demo. It took him about a year and a half, remarketed himself, reinvented himself, and started recontacting those agents. And one of the agents picked him up, and within 2 weeks he did his first national spot. So it's very important that if you're in radio and you want to do voiceover work, you need to understand what the voiceover world is all about, because it's not radio. Two completely different things. Some of the other people that are featured in here, Debbie Monroe, one of Canada's top voice coaches. She's up in Vancouver and Edmonton. So if you're in Canada and you need a good coach, call Debbie. Or call us and we'll hook you up with Debbie. She's brilliant. Joyce Castellanos, one of the experts on television promo voiceover. Jennifer Vaughn, radio imaging, one of the top women in radio imaging. If you're listening to a radio station and you hear a female voice doing the imaging, it's probably Jennifer, because there are only a few women doing that. Pat Fraley, of course, brilliant with characters. Hillary Huber, audiobooks are her thing. She knows audiobooks better than just about anybody. Terry Douglas on ADR and looping, and of course my partner Penny Abshire closes the book with a chapter which it's an incredibly motivational chapter. And basically the title of the chapter is those who can't hear, no, those who dance. What is it, Penny? She's sitting over here on the other side. Those who dance are considered insane by those who cannot hear the music. Thanks. And it's really about how we as voice talent are often perceived as being a little bit different, a little bit odd, a little quirky. So we need to know that. We need to understand how other people perceive us, what they think of us, and we have to let it roll off our back and not be worried about it, because we're in our own world. We are a group of performers unlike any other kind of performer. We're different from stage actors. We're different from on-camera talent. We're different from professional speakers. Now, all of those performing types use the voice, but we are the only ones who work directly from a script, and the only means of communication is the sound of our voice for everything that we do. That makes us unique in and of itself. Okay, I want to talk about the 7 core elements fairly quickly, because I know we're going to be running out of time pretty fast. These are 7 core skills that when you understand how to use them and you put them into effect will completely change the way that you work with a script. They will completely change your performance. So let's go through them very quickly. Here they are. Core element number 1 is audience, A. And by the way, I call them the ABCs because they are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So A is audience. Audience is who you're talking to. It's the perfect person to hear the message. And the secret of audience is it's always one person. You cannot shotgun your message to a large group of people at the same time. It just won't work. Listen to radio commercials in your area. Notice how few of those commercials are actually talking of the talent or actually talking to one person. Many of them will just sound like they're words coming out of your radio. They're just spewing out there. So be focused on talking to one person. I talked about how you find that, how you define it, how you do that. The second core element is backstory. If you've had some stage acting experience or if you've done anything on camera, any sort of formal acting training, you know the backstory is really, in theater, it's everything that's brought your character up to this moment in time. And in voiceover, we don't have the luxury of time. There are 2 things we do not have that other performers do have. We do not have time, and we do not have text. By that, here's what I mean. We do not have time because we don't have time to memorize a script. We don't have time to really analyze it in depth to really get a fully internalized comprehension of what the story is about. We have a couple of minutes. We'll walk into a studio, they hand us the script, and we have to go. The expectation for voiceover talent is that we will be ready with a professional performance right now. Sure, they'll give us a minute or 2 to look through the script so we understand what the words are, but the expectation is that we will be able to develop an effective delivery instantly on our first or second take. That's what's expected of us. We need to know how to do that. So the backstory cannot be what we use in film or television or forms of performance. We don't have time for that. The text part is that we don't have a description of who our character is supposed to be, or there's no description of the relationships. There's nothing that describes what's going on, at least not in very much depth. There will occasionally be some, a margin note on a script that says, I want to deliver it in a, movie trailer style of delivery or something like that. Pretty vague. We don't get the text that is common in a stage play where there could be 2 or 3 pages that give the entire character breakdown and all the relationships and everything that's gone on in that character's life. We have to make that up ourselves with a voiceover script. But it's every bit as important as any other kind of performance. So when I started writing the first edition of my book, I decided, heck, I'm writing a book. I'll redefine backstory. So I did. And I redefined backstory to be, what is it we're responding to? What is it that happened immediately before the first word in the script? That's what we are responding to with our words that we speak. If you're not responding to something, it's nothing more than words. So we have to know what we are responding to, and that's the backstory. And there can be many backstories within a script. We're not limited to just one at the beginning, because we might have a script where we say something, and then the next line of the script could be in response to something else, to something that an audience or said that we don't hear, but we still have to respond to it. So there could be many backstories in a script. The third element is character, and I've talked a little bit about that already, but basically the character is never you. Okay, there's one situation when it would be, and that is if you wrote the script, it's your story from your own personal experience, and you're the person delivering the message or that story, telling that story. Now it's you, and you will be completely real as you because that's who you are. The challenge we have with voiceover is that we get a script. Somebody else wrote the script. The story is about something we may have absolutely no concept of. The character that we need to play is certainly not going to be us because it's not our story, they're not our words. But we have to be able to figure out how to create that character and to make the character real and believable in the mind of the listener. That's our challenge. So the entire chapter on character, the entire element of character, is all about how do we do that? What's the process that we can use as an actor to create a character? Now, the character can't be something that we drift in and out of. It has to be believable, it has to be real, it has to be consistent. So it takes time and takes practice to really perfect this. And again, this is where there are classes. Bob Bergen, Pat Fraley, MJ Lalo up in LA, and a number of other people teach classes on character voice. Susan Berkeley occasionally has some classes in New York on character voice. If you have an opportunity, if you really want to learn how to create characters, take a class on character, because you will learn so much that you can apply to every other aspect of voiceover. Core element number 4 is desires. Desires is the wants and needs of your character. What does your character want as a result of speaking? In your everyday life, you don't talk unless you are expecting a response or unless you want something out of it. We just don't speak rhetorically most of the time. Well, some of us do, but most of us have a reason for speaking. So it's the desires. If you've had any other kind of acting training, like Stanislavski, if you've been through any kind of method training, you know this as objectives. What are the objectives of your character? What are the objectives of this monologue? Or what does your character want out of it? But alphabetically, A, B, C, O just doesn't work. Desires is the same thing, so I use that instead. So it's the desires. What does your character want and need? That's really the ultimate definition of what the desires is. Energy is core element number 5. Now, energy is critical. If there's no energy in your delivery, then it's going to be flat, it's going to be boring. Again, listen to some of your local radio commercials, and you're going to hear some really boring deliveries because there's no energy in them. The talent is simply standing in front of the microphone, hands in their pockets maybe, and they're just reading words off the page. Not an effective way to deliver a message. That does not do a service to the advertiser or the client. Energy is critical. There are 3 parts to energy. There's the psychological energy, the thoughts. There's the physical energy, the physical movement, and then there's the emotional energy. How does your character feel about what's going on? And that gets into a lot of things about relationships, about understanding the story, and there are just a lot of elements to that, but those are the 3 levels of energy. And I get into those in great detail in the book. Core element 6 is forget who you are and focus. This is probably the single most difficult thing for any performer to do or to master. Forget who you are. Because remember, you're creating a character that's not you. So if there's an element of you in the performance, even if it's a celebrity voice talent, if there's an element of you that's really in there that comes through, then it's you doing the words. Sometimes that can work. Most of the time it's not going to work, especially if we're working as a character voice talent. We can't be in our own way. So it's important to learn how to get out of your way. Forget who you are. And you have to be focused on what you're doing. You have to be focused in that you understand the other 5 elements preceding this: audience, backstory, character, desires, and energy. You need to be able to integrate them into the performance and know how they all work together to create your performance. That's part of the focus. You also have to be focused on being in the moment of telling that story. You can't be thinking about what you're going to be doing for dinner tonight or that hot date you got coming up this weekend. That completely takes you out of the moment, and it prevents you from creating any kind of a believable performance. So you really need to be able to forget who you are so that you're out of your way and be focused on what you're doing. And core element number 7 is gamble. Gamble. Be willing to take the risk. Know that voiceover is not brain surgery. Step outside of your comfort zone. It's not going to kill you. You might feel silly, you might feel foolish, but those are just the voices in your head talking to you. One of the things that Penny, we just had a character class last night, and one of the things Penny was talking about is when she first started doing characters, she had the voices in her head were talking to her and saying, oh, they're going to look really foolish and silly. People are going to think you're crazy. Well, what she discovered was that the sillier she feels, the more believable and real the character. So be willing to take the risk. Be willing to gamble that what you're doing just might be exactly what's needed for the performance. So those are the 7 core elements: audience, backstory, character, desires, energy, forget who you are and focus, and gamble. Learn how to use those and put them into force in your performances, and it'll make a huge difference. It's like night and day once you start to use these. And again, these are things that you can understand exactly how to use them. You can know what they are, but until you actually start to use them and have the experience of the impact that they have, it really won't make a big difference. So that's where workshops and additional training and ongoing education really come into play. My book is a great resource. It's going to give you the basic fundamental tools, but I do encourage you to find other coaches that can help you apply these things and help you move your performing to the next level. Okay, a couple of quick tips and about demos, and then we're going to wrap up and take some questions. If you're looking for a voiceover class, and you talk to the coach, and they said, yeah, after our 8-week course, we're going to give you produce a demo for you, and so you can get out there and start marketing yourself. When you're interviewing your voiceover coach, if that comes up in the conversation, I would strongly recommend that you look for a different coach, because that coach is more interested in putting money in their pocket than they are in creating your abilities or helping you to become the best performer you can be. I do not know of anybody who has taken a single voiceover class who has been ready to produce a high-quality, marketable demo. Lots of people do that and produce demos, and a lot of those demos just go in the trash because a producer, within 2 or 3 seconds of listening to a demo, a producer will know if you're at a professional level or not. And if you're not at a comparable, competitive, professional level, you're just not going to get listened to. So you will have wasted a lot of money and a lot of time on a demo that's not going to get you any work. So be very careful about that. Don't produce your demo until you are ready. And only you will know when you're ready. So don't rely on your coach to tell you, yeah, I think you're ready to do your commercial demo. How about booking a session next week? No. You are the one that needs to know when you're ready. So how do you know when you're ready? The first thing they need that will be a good indicator is that you've got some training and you're comfortable with working a script. You understand how to tell a story, and you can usually get to the effective delivery within about 2 or 3 takes. So that's a good clue that you're probably ready for a demo. Even more important than that, though, is that you understand the business. You have a business plan in place before you ever get your demo produced. You need to know your niche. You need to know what you do well. You need to know what you don't do well. You need to know who you're going to be marketing your demo to. You need to be compiling names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, creating a database of prospects that fit your niche marketing plan, and you need to put a plan together. Without a business plan, you're going to flounder. It's just going to be you're shotgunning, you're just haphazardly sending out stuff here or there. You're not going to be very successful. To be successful, you have to have some strategy and some kind of a plan. But don't do your demo until you are ready. Another thing about being ready is that your demo, your performing abilities are comparable with the professionals who are out there. You never know whose demo is going to be listened to immediately before or after yours. So yours had better be at a comparable level of professionalism. And one way to discover that is to study other demos. A great website for that is voicebank.net. That's voicebank.net. Click on House Reels, and what it'll do is it'll bring up a list of talent agents. You've got talent agents, production companies, all kinds of things in there. But the thing with the talent agents is these are all the major talent agents in the U.S. in all the major cities. And you can click on any of those agents and bring up the demos of both the male and female talent that they have in all the different categories. And you can go in and listen to the demos online. An amazing resource. There are tons and tons of demos on Voice 123 as well. So go in, listen to the demos, listen to what other talent are doing, and figure out what they're doing. How are they getting to that delivery? Is that an effective delivery? Is it not? Figure out what they're doing and then start applying that to your own performance. And when you're at that level, now you're ready to produce a demo. When you finally get to that point where you're producing a demo, shop around. Don't just go to the producer your voiceover coach says you should go to. Shop around. There are lots of people who produce demos. Lots of recording studios will produce demos. I talk a lot about this in the book, where to look, all the questions to ask. Ask a lot of questions. Listen to the other demos, other voiceover demos that studio or producer has created, what they've done. If possible, visit the websites of some of those talents. Contact them. Ask how effective their demo's been. Do some homework. It's going to pay off big time in the end. One thing, though, if you're asking the producer about, so let's say you ask them a question that, I'd really like to know how many demos have you produced for people who have really gone on and made it big? Chances are they're not going to be able to tell you. And that's because a lot of times what will happen is voice talent will come in, they'll produce a demo, and then they disappear. We never hear from them again. I've produced a lot of demos for people that they've left the studio, and I have no idea where they are. We do have a handful of people that we do work with on a regular basis, so I know what they are doing. And I know how good they are, and I know what their successes have been. Others just vanish into the night, and we never hear from them again. So don't be surprised if you ask that question and the producer can't answer it. Also, don't be tempted or sold on the idea of duplicating lots of CD copies, because in this market, today's world of voiceover, you don't need them. You maybe need a dozen CDs of hard copy demos, but the world of voiceover today is moving towards electronic files, MP3 files, websites with downloadable audio, that sort of thing. So you don't need to do a lot of duplication, but you need to know how to do that, and you need to know how to create the graphics for the tray card and the inserts and the CD labels, and to how to create an image and a brand so that everything is consistent with your business. And that's all talked about in the book as well. But there are some, I won't say a lot, but there are some coaches who will say, yeah, you need to have at least 50 copies of your demo. No, you don't. Maybe 10, 15. If you've got a computer with a CD-ROM burner or CD burner, you can make your own. Do one-offs. As long as you've got the graphics and the packaging and the marketing plan in place, you'll be fine. Okay, so that wraps up everything I wanted to talk about about the book and the 7 core elements and the demo tips that I had in mind. So, Caroline, if we've got any questions, I'll be happy to answer those in the time we have remaining.
Yes, let me just take a look.
So we're looking for questions.
We have so many. I'm trying to find the most common ones now.
Well, while Caroline's looking up the questions, I want to remind you about the website again, and that is voiceacting.com/AOVAV123. And that's where you can order a copy of my book and get the $150 plus bonuses that go with it. So we got a question, Caroline?
Okay. Yeah, let me just see. I had one question about, were you going to do any workshops in New York, and when would they be?
Okay, we're working on our schedule for next year. We don't have anything planned for New York at the moment. However, we are working on an event that will be coming up in March of next year, March 20 through the 24th, I think are the dates. We'll have more information about that in the newsletter that will be coming out on tomorrow, Thursday. And this is going to be a major voiceover event. This is going to be big. Penny and I will be teaching probably 2 days. We're going to have Connie Terwilliger, Frank Fredericks. We're working on getting Pat Fraley to come in and teach as part of this. It's going to be a 4-day voiceover extravaganza, and it's going to be huge. And it'll be in Las Vegas. That's the major project we're working on right now, in addition to our usual San Diego 8-week workshops. We also have a teleseminar that will be starting in January. So if you go to the voiceacting.com site and just click on calendar of events, you can see what we have planned. If you do sign up for the newsletter, we do make our special announcements to the newsletter list first. So you can always be kept up to date on what we're doing by signing up for that. Do we have another question?
Yes, we have one here saying that Pat Fraley's audiobook masterclass ends with production of an audiobook demo. Is that an exception to your tip 1?
Audiobooks are a whole different world. It's a completely unique aspect of voiceover work. And if you have the ability to tell stories and you're a good reader, then absolutely what you get out of Pat Fraley's audiobook class, that final produced demo, can be a good starting point for an audiobook demo. The thing about audiobook demos is they're not produced. There is no production value to them. It's just you telling the story. So if you've mastered the ability to tell the story, and most people who go through that kind of a class or are interested in doing audiobooks, they're pretty much avid readers to begin with. They know how to tell stories. They do a lot of reading to kids and that sort of thing. So they've already got some experience doing it. So it's not a whole lot. It's not a big jump when you're taking Pat's workshop. So yeah, the demo that Pat does at the end of that class can be a good starting point. I'd say probably you're going to be wanting to upgrade that or change it and improve it over time, but it can be a starting point for marketing as an audiobook talent. Another question?
Yes, let's take a look here. I've been advised that the Neumann U87 is the best mic to go for, but I can't afford it. I've tried a Rode NTK and Neumann TLM 103 recently and loved the sound the Rode valve mic gave my voice. The TLM was a little flatter. What would you say is the best mic for voiceover work?
Oh, that's a good question. What is the best mic? The best mic is the mic that makes you sound the best. There is no best microphone. It doesn't exist. Now, the Neumann is probably the standard of the recording industry. That's been out there for years. I worked with U87s when I was working in Hollywood in the 70s, and it's a beautiful microphone. Awesome. I would love to have a U87 in my studio, but those things are $4,000. I can't afford one either. So I don't have a U87. I use a Neumann TLM 103. And I know I'm throwing out numbers here, which probably don't mean a lot to a lot of people. But the Neumann, just so that you know, Neumann, Neumann, is they're out of Germany. I believe there are some made in the U.S. too. There might be Neumann USA. But it's a German microphone. Goes back to the 1940s. An amazing design on condenser microphones. And the U47 and the U87 were their primary mics in the 60s and 70s. And they've come out with a lot of variations. The TLM 103 was designed specifically for voiceover work. It does have a little bit of a flat sound. In my studio, I have a 103. I sound great on the 103. If I put Penny on the 103, it sounds like she's talking behind a curtain. Yeah, I mean it just muffles her voice. Now, there's another microphone that we have that I use for Penny, which is an MXL 990. The MXL 990 is a crisper mic, and it has a brighter edge to it. It doesn't have the low frequency boost that the Neumann has. I sound okay on the MXL, but when I put Penny on the MXL, it's like bang, she's just there, crystal clear, bright, and clean. The difference is the Neumann TLM 103 is about a $1,000 microphone. The MXL 990 is about an $80 microphone. And I have that on my website also if you go look in products. There's all kinds of stuff and equipment and things you can get through the website. So go browse around a while. But as far as being a best microphone, I've known people who have wonderful experience with Rode, other Marshall microphones, MXLs, AKGs, Audio-Technica. It just really depends upon what sounds best for your voice. And the only way you're going to learn that is to experiment and do exactly what you're doing. Test the Neumanns, test the Rhodes, and see which one you feel gives the best sound for your voice within your budget. That's about the only recommendation I can have for that.
Okay. Another question here we have is, what do you recommend for those talents that live in places where coaches may not be available? How can they get training?
Okay, if you're in a city where you don't have access to a voiceover coach in the immediate vicinity, and granted, the voiceover coaches, there are a lot of voiceover coaches around the country. In fact, before I answer that question, I'll just direct you again back to voiceacting.com, and if you click on the resource links in the menu, then look on coaches, you'll find there's about 150 coaches I have listed around the country and in Canada. So every time I find a new coach, I try to get them listed on that links area as a resource, because I know not everybody can come to San Diego to take our 8-week or a weekend, and we can't get to everybody. So I'm trying to make that as a resource so that you can get to a coach and at least start learning about this. But if you're in a place where you don't have access to a coach, you just don't have the ability to travel, but you still want to learn about these skills and this whole craft, there is another option, and we call it our Art of Voice Acting telecourse. We do a telecourse a couple of times a year. We have one starting in January. We'll be starting on January 9th. The whole thing is done over the telephone, very much like what we're doing with this, except we don't have the visuals. It's just only it's a teleconference call. And we can have 15 to 20 people on that call. And it's an 8-week course, about between an hour and an hour and a half each week, depends upon what we're doing. Usually averages around an hour and 15. But we cover all the 7 core elements, and we cover them in depth. We have homework assignments. We ask our students to record on their home equipment. We talk about that a little bit. We have to ask you to record something on your home equipment, send in the files if you have that capability, and then we do critiquing online. So there is a coaching process as part of this telecourse that is not included in other telephone courses. And so one of the bonuses that you get, by the way, when you order the book is you get a $50 coupon, which is good for any of the workshops that Penny and I produce or present, and that includes the telecourse. So that's probably one of the best resources for getting some initial training. And beyond that, I'd say look into other workshops where you would have to travel to. But you can usually plan far enough ahead so that you can set up some vacation time or something to attend the workshop. Our March workshop in Vegas is going to be amazing. So that would definitely be something to consider.
Okay, thank you. I have another one here. Would you recommend investing in an ISDN unit today, or is the trend to move more towards web delivery? Okay,
as far as ISDN is concerned, no. The exception would be if you have a client base that is already asking for ISDN, yeah, it might be worth considering, but ISDN is expensive. If you're just getting started, and even if you've been doing this for a while, ISDN isn't all that much in demand anymore. It's fading away, and there's a new technology that we'll be talking about in the newsletter, and probably within the next month there'll be an announcement about it. There's a new technology which is using the Internet for digital quality, studio quality communication over the Internet. And it's not out just yet, so I can't talk a lot about it, but as soon as we have that available, we'll be putting out the announcements on it. And it's not designed to replace ISDN, but it's designed to be to ISDN. One of the things with ISDN is it's by the phone company. And the phone company is actually scaling back on their ISDN service because it costs them a lot of money to maintain the service and to install the phone lines. So there are places where actually they are discontinuing ISDN service. So it's not what it used to be. So my recommendation is no, don't invest in ISDN unless you've got a client base that is demanding it. What you could do alternatively, find recording studios in your area that have ISDN. They've already made that investment. So if you've got a client that wants ISDN, book the time at the other studio. Add that to your talent fee or to your costs, and that becomes your fees. And if you are using ISDN at your own facility, you had better be including those costs, your expenses for the ISDN, as part of your talent fees or your studio fees. If not, then you're losing money. Next question.
Okay. Thank you. I have another question. Is it possible to work solely out of a major market, solely outside, of a major market via internet and still do as well, or is it essential to be in a large city?
That really depends upon what area of voiceover you're doing. If you're doing audiobook narration, yeah, if you get you make the right connections through your marketing, you absolutely could record audiobook narration at your home studio in the middle of nowhere, and you send off the files to the publisher, and you're good to go. If you're doing animation, cartoon voiceover, sorry, you got to be in Los Angeles. If you're doing commercials, you can do commercials from just about anywhere, but if you're doing national level commercials, it's going to be LA, Chicago, or New York. It's just, you're not going to be doing a lot of national spots anywhere else. So it's a yes and no kind of answer. You can be successful in smaller markets outside of LA depending upon what the genre is that you're specializing in.
Okay, I see. Okay, now James, we have so many more questions here. I don't think we're going to be able to get through all of them, but if you wouldn't mind, if we could send you some of the most common questions here by email, and if you wouldn't mind answering some of them by email, and then we can send them all out to the attendees just so that they have the rest of the information for the ones that are missing their questions being answered.
Okay. Yeah. What I'd like you to do, send me the most common questions, and what we'll do is we'll create a web page that has all the answers.
Great.
And I'll send you that web page link, and it will be within a day or so that we can do that. But I'll send you that link, and then you can send it out to everybody on the call.
Great. Well, thank you very much, James, for presenting this webinar for us.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Yes, thank you all for joining us today. And if you need anything, please let us know.
I hope you've all found it very interesting and got a lot of useful information out of it. We will be sending you guys an email letting you know of the special promotion that James talked about earlier for the attendees of the webinar. That will be going out later on today. Okay, well, Caroline, and I want to thank Voice123 for inviting me to be here today. And I want to thank all of you for joining me on the call. And I look forward to having you visit our website, sign up for the newsletter. And Penny and I absolutely look forward to meeting you at a workshop at some point, possibly even next March, in Las Vegas next March. So I guess with that, we're going to sign off at this end. And thank you. We look forward to seeing you in the future. And if any of you guys have any questions which haven't been answered yet, please don't worry. We will get around to answering them. We'll send them on to James, and as he said, we'll create a page on the website and let you know what the address of the page is later on. Okay? Excellent. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye. Goodbye.